should work. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Emily, for inviting me here. And this should be, I don't think I need this. Can I turn it off?
Yeah, here, I got it. It's a button on the bottom. Sorry, I just picked up a baby.
Got it.
Which makes my mobility less quick.
I'll say at the very beginning that I think Unitarian Universalism is just about the best thing we have right now as far as new forms of community, religious expression. I think we have other places to go in the future. I have some ideas for that myself, but Unitarian Universalism actually came out in part from religious humanism, and I think right now it represents the strongest strain of religious humanism right now. This is actually the first time that I will present in full my story. I've done bits and pieces, so I'm really glad to be able to present it. So as Emily said, my remarks I've entitled A Guide for Each Journey. I'm glad you're all sitting down because I'm going to begin my remarks with a shocker. There is no one right answer. I know I'm in the right place, and that you're used to that. Let that sink in, because it's possible that perhaps maybe you have heard something different in the past. Because certainty is for sale all over. We crave it, crave to feel sure and secure. Unfortunately, certainty is nothing but a feeling. It's a really nice feeling, but it's only a feeling nonetheless. Now, rationality is a thing. So I do happen to believe in truth and principles. I believe science can teach us much about external reality. I believe that the social sciences and the arts can teach us about and shape our internal and imagined realities. I believe that ethics can teach that in any particular situation, some responses are better than others. My goal is to facilitate well-being, especially in the context of religion. Here's the thing, though. Even though right and true and good exist, the particulars are going to look different for each of us, because each of us is different. The path to well-being will therefore also look different for us. That isn't just an advertising line. Though we share powerful human similarities, each of us experiences life, the world, and relationships in distinct idiosyncratic ways. We need and want different things. We respond in different ways to the same stimulus. And here's a really tricky aspect of life. What will benefit one person may harm another. We orient ourselves and move through the world like no one else. In fact, we can ask ourselves the depressing question that may reduce us to a puddle of existential goo. Is it truly possible to ever know another person? Hell, is it even possible to truly know ourselves? We have access to our own thoughts and inner lives, and we can't get away from ourselves, even if sometimes we want to. We should be the world experts on being us. At the same time, we have our blind spots. We naturally resist admitting when we are wrong. One of the worst consequences of this self-protectiveness is that we treat others as objects to facilitate our comfort, rather than treating them as whole people. We fail to adequately respect our differences, and instead act as though others are an extension of ourselves. We can't know what another feels, what it is like to be them. We have access only to our imagined reconstructions of our friends and loved ones that we have in our heads. And then when those real, actual loved ones or friends act in ways that we didn't expect, we feel betrayed and disappointed instead of asking to learn about them. We assume that we know better than they do how they should act. I believe the world would change overnight if each of us with open hearts asked those close to us, please, teach me about you. What makes you feel loved? What do you need? In short, it is shockingly difficult to treat others as independent beings worthy of the respect that we ourselves demand. Just sit with that. Treating others as people should be a very low bar, but it's not. It's very difficult. Yet, despite these challenges and limitations, despite our inability to know anyone fully, we constantly quest for connection. We long to know and be known, to love and be loved. Just listen to any random song on the radio, and you can make a pretty safe bet that that will be the theme. Therefore, though we are in some ways inevitably and forever alone, we find the greatest meaning and satisfaction within relationships, partners, families, friends, communities. And when these relationships fail or prove absent, we are simply not well. The tension between our distinctiveness and longing to belong proves particularly intense when it comes to religion, especially conservative forms of religion. Not that we'd know anything about that here. That's most of them. Religious communities provide a powerful sense of belonging, but at a cost. You are one of us. You are family. We love you unconditionally as long as you believe what we believe, as long as you follow the rules. Remember how I said that we share powerful human similarities? Well, it seems like a predisposition for religion is one of them. Now, before you freak out, I'm not talking about belonging to a particular denomination or believing in a particular god or goddess. I'm not even talking about religion as we currently know it, but the ingredients of religion, an interconnected system of beliefs and rituals, the longing for community and connection, for meaning and purpose. These components prove particularly difficult, if not impossible, to expunge. If you doubt me, just take a glance at the fundamentalist fervor of sports fans. What are these components? I will explain a handful as an example of how we can sift the elements of religion. Belief, belonging, being religious, spiritual, ritualistic, mystical, and mythical. So first, belief. Humans believe crazy things. Even if you don't believe in God, you may believe in your horoscope, or aliens, or conspiracies, or be superstitious in general. Half of Americans believe that God has some hand in the winner of the Super Bowl. True story. We come by these beliefs honestly, or at least evolutionarily. Religion is likely a domesticated form of superstition, those often terrible beliefs that we can't get out of our heads. So here are the different aspects, and there are others. So in addition to belief, we have belonging. Now, all of us desire to belong. We want to be part of groups. And so many people have a social relationship to their religion. They want to go to church because they have friends there. Children are often have this perspective. You want to go because we have friends. But again, the problem is that if you want to belong but don't believe, in many religious communities, not this one, thankfully, that is going to be difficult. So you can be spiritual. Now, that's a very common thing. Spiritual but not religious is a description claimed by many, especially younger Americans. I define spirituality, and this is something I firmly believe in, as a connection between ourselves and ourselves and ourselves and others and ourselves and our environment, though greater than we can currently understand. It doesn't matter if we understand it or not, but it is a transcendent connection that has implications beyond what we grasp. We can be ritualistic without being religious, without being believing, without having these other components. It's that feeling of wanting to get home after a vacation. It's that feeling, how much do you want structure? What does your day look like? Do you do the same things in the same ways? You may be ritualistic, if that is the case. You can also be mystical. I define mystical as a stronger version of spiritual. So spiritual is believing in this connection, and I would define mystical as being able to access that connection. Whether it's through prayer or blessings or healings or dreams or visions, this access and connection that you have to the spiritual reality. Mythical is related to believing, of course, but belief often includes literal belief. And I define someone as mythical if you love stories and love narrative, and if stories can move you independently of whether they're true or not. I think being mythical is a very beneficial trait, because then you can draw from whether it's Doctor Who or literature or whatever it is that can be deeply meaningful to you. You know, the way that Sam is devoted to Frodo is just as meaningful as stories from the Bible. I mean, The Lord of the Rings is often better than the Bible. Now, if you are religious, you can be religious without being affiliated. Whether or not you are affiliated, if you relate to most or all of these elements, you are likely religious. You crave the rich synthesis of myth and ritual and life drenched in meaning. I propose that we will be healthier if we parse out and proportion these elements in our lives rather than accepting or rejecting religion wholesale. Again, Unitarian Universalism does a really great job at this. It won't surprise you to hear that I am enthusiastically all of the above and more, and that is why I define myself as a religious humanist. And the great thing about religious humanism is it feels like an oxymoron, because those who are religious will be like, what the hell are you doing as a humanist? You betray, you think you're your own God. I'm like, yes. And they're like, that's terrible, you can't be religious. And then humanism says, do you know how hard we've worked to get rid of religion? No! Do not put it back. You cannot be humanist and religious. Yes, you can, I say. And again, one of the fun things about human psychology is that the beliefs that most stick in our head are the counterintuitive beliefs that don't make sense. Virgin birth. Virgin. Best excuse ever. I wonder who Jesus' dad was. I think that's one of the most fascinating historical questions ever, because it wasn't Joseph. So my journey, as I said, this is one of the first times that I've ever laid out the whole thing. So I have always been a systematic, thorough, and perhaps obsessive thinker. So as a believing Mormon, I really believed. I believed in everything. I believed in Adamic, Adam and Eve's native tongue. I connected the dots in Scripture. I pondered the state of God's facial hair and appendix, and asked myself how God's grandfather spends his time. I wondered about my relationship to Lucifer and the pre-existence, and missed characters from Mormon Scripture. Most importantly and impactfully, I sought out a PhD program in New Testament textual criticism based on my understanding of a Book of Mormon chapter, which did result in a snarky email from a world-class scholar. He's like, unless you know about the existence of manuscripts I don't know that your proposal is going to work. I'm like, but the great and abominable church. So I wrote my undergraduate honors thesis on Joseph Smith's study and use of languages, which, still believing everything, I argued that Joseph Smith used his limited knowledge of languages, especially Hebrew, as a rhetorical device to legitimize his authority claims in a way his audience could not falsify. Yeah. As soon as I got to graduate school at UNC Chapel Hill, I realized everything I knew was wrong. Well, not quite. But I did realize that very first semester that the history of the world, as Mormonism taught me, dispensationalism. That Adam and Eve were Mormons, the truth got lost, then found, then lost, then found, then lost for a long time, until Joseph made everything better, and now we live in the awesomest time ever. Simply was not supported by the actual discipline of history. So that was when I completely lost my faith. Just kidding. Here's the thing. I naturally think like a philosopher and theologian, so I could update and recreate my narrative of Mormonism as fast as my academic training could deconstruct it. Think of it like running on barrels over a river. So I rewrote Mormonism all through grad school, sifting through the essential and non-essential, coming up with my own answers that fit within Mormonism, such as believing in multiple mortal probations, or my solution to polygamy. Want to hear this? That in a society, this is a fun thing to ask believing Mormons, in a society of perfected, all-knowing, all-loving beings, what difference would marriage make anyway? We're all perfect. We're all loving. There's no privacy. What's marriage? We live with perfect intimacy, and we might as well all be married to each other. At this point, I wanted to teach the history of the Bible. I was motivated by the unfortunate irony that though so many use the Bible as a blunt instrument to shame others, they had very little idea of its actual origins. So through my comprehensive exams, I believed in the fundamentals. Joseph Smith is a prophet, Book of Mormon from gold plates, though I concluded that the content of those gold plates would be fundamentally different than the English version, which is so clearly dependent on the King James Version in 19th century history. See, like all the things. I never rejected new information. I just made it work. So I believed in the plan of salvation, in prophets and so forth, and I still believed in the necessity of temple ordinances, which I mark as the minimum for a literal believing Mormon, because if you don't believe in temple ordinances, there's no reason to be Mormon. Well, that's not true, but as far as literal belief goes. And then finally, after years of creative thinking, I had a friend joke that mental gymnastics was my natural way of moving. The bottom fell out. Although I wouldn't say it's gymnastics, I'd say it was art, it's storytelling. Because again, I never avoided new information. So what finally did it? Teaching world religions. I finally saw the whole picture. I saw the similarities across religions, how they all served to meet human needs, to establish a sense of control, and manage disappointment when that illusion of control inevitably dissipated. I understood that the argument that one tiny, late religion had all the answers and all the authority and was the only way to heaven was something far more likely to be said by humans who wanted to acquire resources than to be revealed by any god worth worshiping. But even this shift was not traumatic for me, since I adjusted my thinking and built a new framework as fast as my foundation crumbled. I was an agnostic. I finally claimed, "How can you be agnostic if you still pray?" my wife asked, providing an illustration of the distinctions that I made earlier. A hopeful agnostic, and still very active in the church. I wanted to be part of the solution. My testimonies got pretty creative, but were always appreciated, mostly because I'm male. I talked about the difference between believing and knowing, or the fact that not everyone needs to be Mormon in this life, or the idea that if we know people and institutions by their fruits, if you weren't thriving as a Mormon, you should probably change something. I asked my Sunday school the completely hypothetical question, if you perchance happened to learn that your existence would end at death, would you live your life differently? The assumption that kept me active was that even if the LDS Church wasn't true, surely it was good, right? But then I found the internet. I'm not totally kidding. I had never gotten involved in internet conversations about religion. I just wrote myself notes in Word documents and talked to friends. Those discussions helped me see the harm that so many experience in the church, especially those who don't look like the mostly white heterosexual old men who lead. I wasn't so concerned about historical issues. I had addressed those years ago, but I was concerned about social issues. Mormonism teaches its members not to be good people, but to be good Mormons. Fortunately, there's a large degree of overlap, but not always. Mormonism not only fails to teach healthy principles about decision-making in relationships, it gave the wrong answers. Is your marriage failing? Just read your scriptures and go to the temple more, as I did. My wife left the church in 2011 after a radical feminist awakening that also changed me. I continued to attend, but we both stopped or adjusted our distinctive Mormon practices. My faith journey and teaching religion professionally exposed me to both the power and flaws of religion. I wanted to improve religion, write and teach about how we can work within our traditions to make them better. In 2012, I started thinking of how a religion could be so good that its truth claims wouldn't even matter. By their fruits you shall know them. In mid-2012, at the invitation of John Dehlin, I launched a Mormon Sunday School podcast, which provided opportunity, remember I was agnostic at this point, it provided opportunity to teach Mormonism in a way that a broad range of listeners could appreciate. from literal active literal believing members to interested atheists. I could teach an approach to the scriptures and Mormonism so good it didn't need to be true. The idea of improving religion began to preoccupy my thoughts more and more. We need new myths. Is there a way to update religion, harness its power? You can replace religion by a handful of things or one thing. But wait, if you replace religion by one thing, it would become religion. In January of 2013, I messaged a good friend of mine in the wee hours of the morning and said, if I were ever to found a religion, which I'm not, it would be high church humanism. But that idea remained mostly a joke. Surely no one could make a living by inventing a new religion. I would be a scholar and professor of the Bible and write a book about transcending religion. But every time I talked and joked about humanism, it felt like less of a joke. The final click happened during the fall of 2013 when I designed and taught a course on the future of religion. It was then that I realized we don't need to invent new myths. We already have new myths. Just go to the theater or pick up a book, and they're everywhere. That is when the idea of humanist denominations solidified in my mind. So the future of religion. I touched earlier on the frustrating paradox that though religion motivates like no other cultural institution, it often motivates in the wrong directions. With all the urgent crises that face us in the world today, abuse, exploitation, corruption, oppression, inequality, the reckless consumption of our resources, climate change, and on, why does God care so much about preventing gay marriage or discouraging birth control? Unitarian Universalism presents a shining example of religion done well, but still has its limitations. I would gently propose that Unitarian Universalism, though it is so good and does so much good, it is limited by preference. In fact, that's one of your ideals, is not to inflict anything on anyone. And, believe whatever you want and come when you want and do what you want. That has limitations. One thing that fascinates me is how religion motivates to an unethical degree. And I don't want to create something that motivates unethically. I don't want to create something, I will never play the "you will go to hell if you don't give money to my institution" card. I don't think any institution should have that much power. But I do believe that we need institutions and organizations that push us beyond our preference. Because one of the great paradoxes of human nature is that we don't have enough self-control to even do what we want. Or rather, we don't have enough structure in our lives to follow through with what our best selves want. This is why New Year's resolutions always work. Right? There's this book called Nudge that promotes a provocative oxymoron, and it's libertarian paternalism. And the authors propose that we are so almost helpless when it comes to context. Advertisers know this, and I think it is a tragic paradox that we Americans especially, we embrace advertising. It's like manipulate us, manipulate our deepest fears and show us naked women to get us to buy things and to get us to act out our basest urges. It was like, don't you dare illegalize a 72-ounce Coke, because what is America if I cannot buy a 72-ounce Coke? And so we embrace manipulation, frankly. We pay lots and lots of money for it. With advertising, or they pay to manipulate us. I don't know which way it goes. But again, we resist, we shy away from this high level of rigor and structure that we as humans need. I think a lot of us can relate to this idea that some of the most meaningful events in your life are things you wish had never happened, or that you would never have asked for. Whether it's the failure of a relationship, or a death in the family, or losing a job, it is often these rigorous experiences that shape us as humans. And so I don't think that we are going to move forward unless we can harness that level of rigor. What is Olympic level religion? You know, what does it mean to sacrifice? And again, the problem is that affiliation with so many religions sucks. Like, you are dedicating your resources. People are giving incredible amounts of time and money and passion for things that don't actually matter. And so when they don't believe in the religion anymore, there's nothing left to hold them. And beyond that, they feel burnt out. And plus, it is very difficult to invent structure on your own. Have any of you tried to invent a language? That's totally going to go well. And this is what I mean when I say that we humans have co-evolved with religion. Religion is an incredibly powerful technology. The cognitive revolution was about 70,000 years ago, when we were able to imagine things that aren't actually true, these imagined realities and myth. And that is what enables us to cooperate. We, Homo sapiens sapiens, the other humans couldn't do it that we know of. Neanderthals never traded that we know of. They made all their tools. They did everything within their small groups, even though they were bigger and stronger and smarter than Homo sapiens sapiens. But what we, the ones who have survived and are now destroying the world, what we humans do is we cooperate over dumb things, too. We cooperate flexibly and in large groups. And there's no other animal that cooperates both flexibly and in large groups. You have things like wolf packs, or that really cool new creature, coy wolf, which is like a dog, coyote, wolf thing. Awesome. That cooperate flexibly, but usually within their families. And even primates cooperate in smaller groups, and they have to know everyone. So cooperation is both our salvation and our curse. And one thing that conservative communities, I wouldn't describe this as a conservative community necessarily. One thing about conservative communities, if I may say so, is that they get shit done. It may be dumb shit. It may be horrible things. But it was, so I marched in the Pride Parade a couple of years ago with Mormons Building Bridges. And Mormons Building Bridges has its flaws, for sure. You know, I mean, most of them weren't quite willing to advocate for legalized gay marriage. But they wanted to show appreciation. So that's kind of like an offensive level of support. But it's better than nothing. And it was really sobering to me that Mormons Building Bridges, which worked within this conservative, basically fundamentalist religion, had about 400 people. Mm-hmm. And then there's like Atheists of Utah that had 20. It's like, yay, atheists. And so even though I would actually propose that stability and even productivity and fairness are at odds with each other. And so, and this is something we need to wrestle with. I'm not saying give in to one side or another. So basically what we need, I think, is a conservative institution with liberal ideals. And I'm going to make it. So, as I said, in order to meet the human needs engaged by religion, we need to consider three groups. Tell me if I miss anyone. I think I got everyone in the entire world.
In three groups. Impressive.
Three groups.
We'll see.
Those currently affiliated with organized religion. Those unaffiliated, but not interested in joining a structured community. And those unaffiliated and interested in joining a structured community. I think that's everyone. So, as I said, my three solutions to, and this is why I founded the Olam Institute, and eventually I want to be a minister, found a seminary, and found humanist denominations, and build cathedrals. And that's what I mean by high church. Think Catholicism for atheists. So what I want to do, solution number one, is religion better than true? And I see this as kind of a consultant level work where most adherents would never even be aware of what's going on. So what you do is you talk to religious leaders and work within the narrative and make religion better. So my Sunday school podcast is 94% active members and 30% teach. I call this my chapel penetration. It's super deep. Because there are the internet conversations about Mormonism, and then there's chapel Mormonism, and there's not much communication between the two. But I have created a podcast that teaches humanism in Mormon language. And sure enough, I hear from both atheists and believers, and they like what they hear. The biggest compliment I ever got was my episode on Doctrine and Covenants 122 that talks about Joseph Smith in Liberty Jail, and a pastor who took care of women and children in Haiti, a Christian pastor, shared it and said that it was an amazing meditation on suffering that was very meaningful to him. If a Christian pastor serving in Haiti could find meaningful a story about Joseph Smith, I think I've done something. So the thought exercise that I propose for religion better than true is that you, and I'm literally going to do this on the internet with the religious humanist forums, religioushumanism.org forums. I'm going to have atheists and believers talk to each other. And it's going to be like team atheist and team believer, literally. And the thought exercise, and we will have finalized versions of multiple religions, is what form of religion can a literal, believing, open-minded, active adherent and a sympathetic former member atheist, what form of religion can they agree on? And that will elegantly and efficiently create a better version of every religion. And because people on the internet are obsessed with proving things wrong, they will poke at these articulations of particular religions. I think Pope Francis, for example, is pushing the limits of Catholicism. Of course he has shortcomings. His feminism, not quite up to par. Although, he does wash women's feet as part of his ritual. There was a woman who was, this is so touching, she was pregnant out of wedlock, and he's like, if your priest will not bless your baby, I will come bless your baby. And so I think Pope Francis is really close to a version of Catholicism so good that it doesn't need to be true, and that's why so many atheists love Pope Francis, whereas the most conservative Catholics are like, I don't like what you're doing. So that's religion so good it needn't be true. A Mormon example would be service missions, which should be a no-duh thing. But if every Mormon missionary met to community leaders and they said a couple things. We have a message we want to share. We also want to learn about you. We want to learn what you believe because there's truth there. And that's what our faith teaches, is that there's truth in, we've forgotten. But there's truth in all traditions, and we want to learn about you, and we want to share about us while we're serving you. We're young, we're strong, we don't want to knock on doors. It's like, what can we do? put us to work. I think if that is what missions were for Mormons, the atheist parents would say, I'll pay for that. I will support that. And it would increase converts. It would increase retention. It would be so demonstrably good that the Mormon aspect wouldn't matter so much. Now, I do think Mormon theology is one of the best out there, but the LDS Church is conditional cult. So that's one. Part two, solution. So that's if every religion on the planet were the best version of itself, that would take care of every adherent of that religion. So that's most of us. So now we need to take care of the unaffiliated. So there are unaffiliated that don't really want to go somewhere every Sunday. There are a lot of those. Shocking. And so what I propose as solution number 2 is a spiritual training regimen. And I used to call this buffet spirituality, but that's this. Not quite. I mean, Unitarian Universalism is more structured than buffet spirituality. But as Americans especially, we already seek out what we want and only what we want. And I actually think that this will cause the downfall of the American empire. It already has. Is that there's so little that pushes young Americans, especially, beyond preference. I think a fair summary of young Americans is they want to do good, bless their hearts. They want to be good and do good and serve when they want to and in the ways they want to. So again, this is in Eastern traditions, on the other hand, there are things like honor and saving face and tradition. And so people, Japanese, Indians, others will work themselves to death in order to be honorable for their society. And remember, getting things done, not getting things done. That's the problem. It's the conservatism, the honor that is often unfair and hierarchical and overly structured. So what I propose is a spiritual training regimen, and this will be one of the first things that I'll put out, that uses personality tests, and it is an interactive process that first figures out, those elements of religion. Where do you fall on that? How ritualistic are you? How much innovation do you need? How creative are you? How adventurous are you? How much are you open to new experience? What kind of foods do you like? And so it will ask things like, what is your sacred space? Where do you feel the most safe? Where do you think the most clearly? What drink do you imbibe ritualistically? What is your scripture? What are 4 or 5 texts that inspire you, that move you? And then this app, there will be other forms, but the app will be the strongest form, will prescribe religion to you. Your own religion. And you can only change it like every 6 months. It will remind you, and you will set how often these things are. It will remind you, and it's all about mindfulness. It will say, now go to your sacred space. It's time to go to your sacred space. And the spiritual training app gets at this issue that we don't make time for what we actually care about. I'm very chagrined to realize that I don't even spend 5 minutes a day with each of my children every day. That's not okay. I try. Sometimes. It's so easy to lose track. And so if we had, and it's so easy not to be mindful, to avoid, Ellen Langer has amazing research, and she cuts through meditation, running, all these things. She's like, why you feel good running, why you feel good meditating, is it's mindfulness. Do you eat mindfully? I close my eyes most of the time when I eat, because it's just an overwhelming experience, and I can taste better when I close my eyes. So this app will remind you, now it's time to get a drink of water, or a drink of coffee, or scotch, and sip it. And I'm kind of not kidding. It may be possible that at your work, you may be like, for religious purposes. My religion requires me to sit in a quiet room and drink scotch for 5 minutes. And again, the funny thing is, we'd probably be better workers if we did that. There will be ritual relationships, where it says, now is the time to tell someone you love them. Reach out. One of my students came up with a good suggestion. He said there needs to be ritualized discomfort. Once a day, driving is uncomfortable for me, so I get that plenty. Get out of your comfort zone, ritually. So that's the spiritual training app, and I think, and also there will be social media check-ins. And so even people who don't want to do the spiritual training app can be voyeuristic and say, whoa, that's their scripture, that's so cool. So you can sign up, look at feeds and read other people's scripture, if they agree, And I think it could be, even if you don't participate, it could be an incredibly rich experience to see what other people, what are you drinking? And so that, and also there can be, because remember these are individualists who are mostly privileged enough to decide what they want themselves. The type that are and then we put our children in Hebrew school after yoga. And this is a reason why Greg Epstein and Alain de Botton are all white ex-Jews and have small communities. There's a reason why they are the ones who are proposing these new forms of religion that are still very small. But the spiritual training app can create loose communities where you can join and check in with each other. How are your rituals going, and what are yours, and maybe I can learn from you. And so that will be a community based on preference, but it will still have that strength, and maybe they'll get to like it. Maybe the cats will play nicely together. So the only people who remain, and this happened when I was asking myself, what does a conservative who has lost faith need? Not these loosey-goosey communities. No, they need structure. They need... this is where buffet spirituality came from. I used to term it, there's a buffet approach and a diner approach. And I do think this does describe liberal versus conservative in general. Liberals, and Jonathan Haidt has fantastic research on this, liberals are can I try that new green thing you're eating? Bring it on! Whereas those who want the diner experience, which political elections probably teach us are about half of people. Liberal conservative probably is roughly 50-50. Depending radically on where you are, urban, rural, all that stuff, but overall. And they want the diner experience. They don't just want to go to the diner. They want to have Mildred serve them. And they don't just want to have Mildred serve them. They want to tell Mildred, I'll have the usual. They need that experience of consistency and stability and structure. So this is why we need new religions. But what you need is you need new religions that use what we already have today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse engineer religion into all of its bits. I'm going to use social sciences and the arts to point religion at individual and collective thriving, and then I'm going to translate the force, the fuel of religion, the social science goodness, into modern myths. So I'm going to found 4 denominations, and these are going to incubate and gestate online for a couple of years. But they'll be immediately applicable. There will be, so the thing I'm working on right now is, so the Olam Institute is my nonprofit. Religioushumanism.org is what I'm working on right now. I can't believe I got the URL. What the hell? Seriously. And that's like getting baseball.com. Because just as many people want religious humanism as people who are interested in baseball. And so on these forums, we'll be hashing out all of these questions. And these will lead to 4 initially, but more denominations. One is called Life Church. Life Church would be very familiar to you because it's similar to Unitarian Universalism, but with very clear rites of passage, vows. And if you don't keep your vows, you get in trouble. There's ritual clothing. There are ritual meals. There is that level of stained glass windows, cathedrals. Again, think high church, not low church. So Life Church will draw sermons from science, art, culture. Think about Cosmos. Neil deGrasse Tyson delivered in this beautiful rhetorical way. I definitely say that Neil deGrasse Tyson is a prophet of Life Church. But it will absolutely have sermons and structure and ritual and initiation. And then the next one that I'm going to found is Geek Church. Oh, in Life Church, it's polytheistic. There are personified virtues, and those are the gods and goddesses, and the logical fallacies and nasty parts of human nature are the demons of Life Church. But again, it has a myth. It has a myth as structure. It has a Bible, like a closed canon Bible. There will be a life Bible. Okay, the next one is Geek Church. I'm going to religionize popular culture. There will be a marble statue of Yoda, and stained glass windows of Middle Earth. And so there will be a geek Bible, and I really want to get it together before Stanley dies, so I need to move quickly on that. So again, reverse engineer the Bible. Say, well, what is Scripture? It has praise, it has mourning, it has celebration, it has rite of passage, it has myth and origin and motivation and inspiration. And then on the forums, we'll ask, where in DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Doctor Who, where are you inspired? Where do you find these stories? And so these are people they'll crowdsource. They'll all suggest these things. And we will have like Council of Nicaea. Well, that's not the one that describes Scripture. More like Trent. That's like these books are in and out, and we'll make the Geek Bible. The third is Earth Church. Earth Church is religionized environmentalism, neo-paganism, some carefully... indigenous traditions will be tricky, of course, because of cultural appropriation. But it will be part of a larger conversation. It's not something I'm doing. It's something that we all have a conversation. I'm seriously considering only having women clergy in Earth Church, just because, to see it done. And you pray to Mother Earth. And here's where literal belief fits in. Is Mother Earth an anthropomorphic goddess with a great rack? Maybe. Does the earth itself have a spirit? Maybe. Is Mother Earth a symbol and a myth for the earth as a living being? Unarguably. But people can range. So what I'm doing is I'm reverse engineering this cultural evolution of religion and then putting it back into the stream of cultural evolution. And then I'm thinking that the last one I'll do first, I want business church too. Business church will have rituals like a prayer before your business meetings, or ritual cufflinks or a necklace to remind you to be ethical and to remind you to be good and to be sustainable. And the prophets of business church would be not the prophets, but the prophets of business church would be those who are looking forward, like what is the new economy? What is this new sustainable way of doing business? But the other one that I'm going to do, besides Life Church, Geek Church, Earth Church, is Tech Church. And so that will be similar to transhumanism, and it'll be ritualized technology, but with the power of religion. So that is what I want to do with my life.
Woo!